Hey there, guys, and welcome to the Robidoux Row live stream here on November 5th. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about another one of the professions that occurred here in St. Joseph around the era of Joseph and the early founding of the town, all the way up to about the 1860s. Though, granted, this profession has been around since basically the dawn of time. Before we do dive into that profession, do want to talk a little bit more about our membership drive. We are still working with the North American Reciprocal Museum Association, and they do give you access to a lot of amazing museums all over our country. So we'd love for you guys to check out some of those museums and have access to those. And along with that, being able to join up with us here at the Row, you will be able to have access to all of our great events, including Joe's birthday party, as well as we have a Christmas party every year that's members only. So if you want to get involved with that, definitely get in touch with us here. We'd be super excited to invite you in and have you be part of the family here at the Row. Now, today, as I said, we're going to talk about a very special profession that did exist here in St. Joseph. In fact, by 1860, this profession had over 19 different shops that were doing this profession. And so what we're talking about today is blacksmithing. Now, obviously, blacksmithing is very important to this era, but what we need to do is take a step back and look at blacksmithing as a whole and when blacksmithing started. So blacksmithing is actually primarily forging in wrought iron or steel. Most people think it's all metalwork, but it's actually quite commonly only wrought iron and steel. Now, blacksmiths were insanely important historically. Blacksmithing dates back to as far back as we can find. There's even a tale in the Bible of a gentleman known as Tubal-Cain, who is, by biblical tradition, the first smith. The Norse had multiple members of their mythology who were smiths. They were the earliest smiths to exist. And throughout all of ancient history, smithing and blacksmithing specifically was an insanely important part of being able to have a society, being able to have materials. And so obviously smithing is extremely important historically. But specifically when you're talking about the 1840s, blacksmithing, and obviously through the 1860s and 70s when we had the Wagons West movement, blacksmithing was almost more important than even back in the medieval and pre-medieval periods. The blacksmiths that were the ones that produced the actual rings that went around the outside of the wagon wheels, they were the ones that were making the connector pieces for the wagons. They were working with the farriers and they were working with the wagon makers to produce the parts that were necessary for people to go west. Without blacksmiths in the area, people would not have been able to finish the wagons. They would not be able to finish the ferries to go across the river. So they were extremely important. As I said, in 1860, according to the actual city directory, there were 19 separate blacksmith companies in St. Joseph that were producing all manners of materials, including, but not limited to, those wheels and stuff we just talked about, but also they were the primary producers of eating utensils. A lot of blacksmiths were highly involved in the production of weapons. They were also in production of the agriculture implements you need and tools and basically anything you could think of that you would need to survive either going west or even here in St. Joseph. They were the ones that were producing it for you, and they were the ones that were kind of making it so you could actually go west. And so they really were one of the most important positions. And we know that multiple blacksmiths appeared very soon after the founding of St. Joseph. Many of them were moving west and stopped because they realized that they could make a large amount of business. I know even out west in Scotts Bluff, one of the first buildings ever built in Scotts Bluff was a blacksmith. And so that was a little bit about the blacksmithing here in the area. I did want to dive a little bit into a couple of the actual blacksmiths we had. And so I'm going to go ahead and pull a book up here real quick and talk to you a little bit about some of the companies that we had here in town. And so, like I said, in the 1860s, we did have a number of blacksmiths that were here in the area. Many of them actually were located right around the downtown area. And then you actually will have some of the names that you'll find in here are ones that you will find still to this day in our area, such as the Schenecker families. We have the Burnside families, which I know is a family member that's been very important to our society. And like I said, a lot of these, they were built right around the downtown area. One of them that's I've seen quite a bit is actually called the Lower Jesse and John Company, and they were actually located at 3rd and Charles. Or the Tibbets were at Frederick Avenue at 10th and 11th. So they were all right around the downtown area, basically in range for these farriers and these cart makers to have access to them. And so a lot of them became very, very wealthy men here in the area. Some of them went on to actually become parts of banking industries and other businesses because they had made so much off their blacksmith work. And still, even to this today, there are blacksmiths in our area. I know in Cameron and even throughout the Northwest region, there is actually a blacksmith guild that runs here in the area. And so that was a little bit about blacksmithing, kind of give you guys a taste of another one of those businesses that came through here to kind of, know what was being created. As we said, we're getting to the end of the season, but we are still open, so we'd love for you guys to come by and see the exhibits we have here. We do still have our St. Joseph in Color exhibit that I'd love for you guys to come see. It's fascinating to see some of them, including some pictures we have from this 1840s, 50s, and 60s era where you can really see what it was like to live here. I'm going to play you guys a quick video here again of that St. Joseph in Color so you guys can have a little reminder. And then we'll see y'all here next week again. Thanks. Bye. Hey there, guys. Welcome to the Reload live stream here on the 29th of October.